Macchiato, frappuccino, stuff like that with soybeans and stuff.
So funny. I'm not a Starbucks. I'm like a Dunkin' Donuts kind of guy. You know, I just like regular coffee.
Yeah, just give me good coffee.
Good coffee, exactly.
Yeah. All right, Keyur. First of all, I wanted to thank you today. It's going to be a very interesting project. You're the first doctor that we're going to sit down and talk about Dentistry Unveiled. I remember you and I had a conversation at the restaurant about the dentistry on its own. Like, where's it going? Where's it heading? Right? The combination of, do the patients really trust the doctors, or is there a bad apple in the dentistry that pretty much runs the whole industry? And I think you and I both came across so many good doctors that have hearts and passion and everything for the dentistry, not specifically all the other perks that come with it. And I think that's the reason we wanted to sit down and talk to you today and ask some questions, and more about who are you as a person. You know, what is it something that about you, and what do you like about the dentistry? Maybe we'll talk about your passion and upbringings and what made you to decide to go into dentistry. And so I really thank you for this opportunity. I think it's going to be a great interview today.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Well, the first question, if you don't mind, I'm always fascinated by people's upbringing. Like, what is it something in your family? How did you start? Is it your mom, your family?
Yes.
A little bit about your childhood.
So I came, my father passed away when I was very young. So it was just my mother and myself as we were growing up. And, you know, I was more attached to my mother's side of the family as we were growing up. So everyone was a professional to some degree. We had several pharmacists, some microbiologists, and several people in the medical field, you know, or the auxiliary medical field as well. So that was kind of where the interest sparked, you know, and then I saw my mom work very, very hard. She was more on the business side, though. She was into accounting, and she was a bookkeeper for many, many years, and she'd work many, many jobs to help us, support us and everything like that. And I just saw how hard she worked. So the work ethic in that aspect, and then getting the influence of other family members that were in the medical field really influenced me to go towards that, towards that goal.
This is so fascinating. You know, with all the kids and parenting, I'm always fascinated. Did your mom ever sit down and talk to you about the hard work? Did she ever sit you down and said, this is how you're going to get things in life? Was there any conversation about it?
You know, there weren't one-on-one conversations necessarily that I remember. It was more of what I remembered was what she did and what I observed. It was more observation than anything. So I'd see her work pretty hard, and I'd see her tired at the end of the day, and you know, and satisfied though. You know, she wouldn't complain about anything. She's not a complainer. She was a very positive person. She said, you know, listen, son, if you want to get through life, you have to work hard, and she showed it to me, and that's basically how it happened. You know, how I was influenced by her positively.
Wow. Was it through the school that you had to prove that you are also the hardworking person?
Through school for myself, or, you know, I don't know. I feel like I had that work ethic right from the beginning, just because it was around me. You know, my uncles were like that, my mother was like that, grandparents were like that, so they were business people as well, and that's how it started. And then, you know, when you get into school, of course you have to work hard to get to a certain stage, and it was always, you know, my mother encouraged me to do well in school. I didn't do so well in the beginning, you know, probably up until grade 5 I didn't do well at all. And I don't know what it was exactly, whether I wasn't challenged enough or I was lazy or what it was. But in grade 5 actually I met an amazing teacher, and that's kind of how it turned around a little bit in terms of work ethic, working harder, and like putting the stress on getting good grades and achieving something and having some sort of goal and all of that. And that's how it started formulated as we went along.
And so now you're gearing up to graduate the high school.
Right.
Getting very close, and it's time to make a decision on what you're going to do in life. Was there anybody that influenced you in any direction? Was there anybody that you sat down, anybody you followed, or anything that inspired you to to pursue the career?
There were a couple people. So my mother actually got remarried when I was 18, closer to the end of high school. But my stepdad and myself had a very good relationship before that as well. And he is a psychiatrist. So he's, I saw him in terms of his work, how the patients respected him and how he was doing a positive thing and influencing people in a positive way. And I was sort of going towards that field of psychiatry. And he, as a psychiatrist, he'd analyze everyone that he'd come across.
Right.
And he sat me down one day and he said, son, it's great that you want to do something like this. However, the way that you are, the personality that you are, and I don't think this is the right field for you, per se. Not to say that you shouldn't do it, but explore other things as well. I don't want you to restrict yourself just because I'm a psychiatrist in this field. So explore other things. So he had a good friend who's a general dentist, and that's how I was introduced to dentistry. I just go over there and hang out with the general dentist, see what he did.
The teeth didn't scare you?
Teeth didn't scare me at all. I was pretty interested in terms of what he was doing, because I always had a positive dental experience as I was growing up. So there was, it never did scare me. I was very interested that, this is someone that gets to work with their hands all day, gets, to make a positive impact on a patient's life, and you get to interact with people all day, and that was more towards my personality than what my father was talking about, basically. So that's why he kind of steered me in that direction as well. So.
About what age you decided to pursue that career?
So so that's when it started, basically. So I was still on the medical or dental pathway. As I was getting a little bit older in undergraduate school, so I did my basic science degree, so biology and psychology. So and you have to get all these prerequisites, and the prerequisites in Canada were similar for medicine and dentistry. So my heart was more towards the dental side, but my mind was still kind of wavering whether or not I should do medicine or dentistry. So I applied for both. At that time in Canada, it was grade-wise, it was probably harder to get into dental school just because there's less dental schools than medical schools. So I got into the medical school that I wanted to, and then I was on the waiting list for the dental school, and I did apply to some U.S. schools, and I did get into some U.S. schools as well. But the one dental school that I really wanted to go to was the University of Toronto, which was my hometown, and so I was on the waiting list for that. I paid my deposit for a dental school in the U.S. I said no to the medical school. Paid my deposit for the dental school in the U.S. 2 weeks before I was supposed to move to Chicago. I was going to Northwestern. 2 weeks before, I got a call from University of Toronto, and just luckily I got in. Nice. And it was nice. It was nice from there. Couple of reasons, not to say that Northwestern University wasn't a good dental school, but Toronto was home, and that's where I wanted to be. And I never was too far away from home or too far away from my mother at that time. So it was comfortable, and it's a good school as well. And all of my friends that were applying for dentistry, some of them got into the University of Toronto. So it was nice to be in a comfortable environment, and it was nice. So
undergrad, right? You're in undergrad. You're getting ready for the medical school or the dental school. Were you always an A-type student?
I was. I mean, once I turned around my elementary school life, I started getting better grades, and then just, for some reason I always wanted to do the best that I could. And we never did ABCs, we always did percentages. So if it wasn't 100%, my mother would joke around with me. I'd come home with a 97 or something. She was like, where's the other 3%? It's a typical thing amongst various cultures to
Right,
to have that. And she was never serious, but in my mind, I always thought, oh, where is the other 3%?
You felt the pressure.
I felt the pressure
Yeah.
of getting the extra 3% or whatever it was. So yes, typically I did better in school, and a lot of it came naturally, but it was a lot of hard work as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Was there any room for fun?
All the time. All the time, yeah.
Let's talk about that.
So,
how did you balance that?
So, I mean, I had good friends going through high school and undergraduate as well, and we always had fun. I mean, I was part of student council, I was part of sports, getting better grades as well, and that's part of my personality as well. I like to, if I feel like I'm, more geared to one side, then I don't feel balanced in life. I have to kind of balance everything out. So I needed the social interaction. I needed the sports. I needed the schooling. I needed everything to be, well. So the way I balanced it out was just, some time management basically.
Right.
You had to pick and choose. Sometimes you couldn't go to see some movies because you had to study or whatever, and sometimes you didn't really want to study and you wanted to go play basketball.
Right.
And that was basically kind of picking and choosing and not trying to do everything, but doing everything balanced.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Just a question. I'm very also curious about that. Imagine, just try to remember yourself in undergrad school. You're sitting in the library studying for exam, right? And some of your friends call you and say, Keyur, we've got this great party. Let's go.
Right.
How did you feel on a scale 0 to 10, 0 being I really don't care, 10 I really want to go at that moment?
Well, between me and you,
yeah,
I'd end up going sometimes.
Which is good.
Yeah, which is good, right? But the times that I really could not go, you'd feel the pressure, but then a little voice in the back of your head would be saying, hey, this is probably not a good idea to do this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Finish your exam, and there's always going to be another party tomorrow. There's always going to be some sort of other fun tomorrow that you can pursue. So, that's basically how how I dealt with those sort of things.
And then obviously you had to buckle down for DAT.
Yes, DAT was pretty tough, and I wrote the Canadian and American DAT because I wanted to apply to both, and there were two different ones at the time. I think there's still two different ones. But it was, I wrote the MCAT as well, and the way that the standardized testing is, the similar sections between the MCAT and the DAT, I was studying it for both at the same time, so I didn't have to study extra. There were a couple extra sections in the DAT, which was perceptual ability, and in Canada you actually had to carve this little piece of soap back then. They don't have to do that anymore, but they give you certain dimensions and you have to carve out the piece of soap. So you'd have to practice that, and it was fun because you'd actually, you sit down in front of the TV or something and you just start carving and making sure that everything is good. And actually a story about that, I was in the middle of my DAT at the University of Toronto, which is where they held it, and I had my piece of soap, and I knew one of the invigilators, one of the people that were invigilating the exam, and as soon as they handed me the soap, I was so nervous I dropped the soap, and soap split in half.
Wow.
So in your mind you're like, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world, which
Right.
it really isn't, but it's the end of the world. Flagged them over and said, hey, I'm really sorry I dropped this. Can you give me another one? He was like, don't worry, just here, take that. And he's like, it's okay. Like people do this, and we do give them another piece of soap. So don't worry, you're not going to fail or anything. But yes, so that was that.
So you learned that it's not really the end of the world. It's
Yeah.
going to be the next step, and you're going to move
Exactly.
forward.
And there's a lot of, I feel like that's another life lesson that I've learned, and I try to teach, younger kids that I come in contact with, especially in my profession. I see 75% children all the time as an orthodontist, and I try to teach them that it's not the end of the world if certain things happen. Yes, at that time it may seem like it is, but sometimes you just have to move past it and get to the next step.
So now you're in the University of Toronto Dental School. 4 years, right?
Yes.
Was it hard?
there were tough times, but you know, there's a lot of social stuff as well. You know, it was kind of like a rite of passage once you got into dental school. It's really, really tough to fail out of dental school unless you really do bad things or are not an honest person or something like that. It's really, really hard. So they hold your hand and they make sure that you can learn all these things because they have a big investment in you by choosing you as a dental student. So, you know, there were tough times, but you had to have good people skills and good social interaction. And you know, the top 20 people, and we had about 100 people in our class, 80 were Canadian, and then 20 were international students. But out of the 100 people, the 20 best students in the class were the 20 most social students in the class as well. And till this day, I talk to a lot of my dental school friends, and you know, some of them are oral surgeons, some of them are periodontists, orthodontists, you know, any specialty that you can think of. And those were the top 20 people that were the most social people that would always go out and have fun and, you know, still study when they needed to study and have fun when they needed to have fun.
Do you think the dental school of the University of Toronto picked you for one of the reasons because of your communication skills?
You know, I wish it was like that, and I think it is more like that right now in a lot of the dental schools, not only in Toronto, but over the US and Canada. But back then, they didn't even have interviews. So it was purely based on marks, on your DAT score, and on your grades, and they didn't have any interviews at all, which I think they saw the fault in their ways over time. And that's why they introduced interviews. And you know, I feel like it's a very important thing to know that this person's not just book smart, that they have some sort of a personality, because you know, that's the person that's going to be representing your profession for the rest of their career and rest of, you know, their time within the profession. So.
Right. Is it true that when you're in dental school, you pretty much have no time for anything else? It's
not true. No, we had a lot of fun. I mean, yeah, it's not true at all. I think it's time management to a big degree, which I wasn't perfect at all. But I think if you set priorities in your mind, I feel like there's time for a lot of things. You know, and everyone's different, of course. Some people learn faster, some people learn slower. And, you know, so you have to kind of look within yourself and say, okay, I need this much time for this, and then I need this much time for fun as well. You know, you can't just bury your nose in the book and expect to be a good practitioner or a good clinician, because you do need the social skill, and you need the release sometimes of having fun.
Maybe just a quick piece of advice that you can give to somebody else. Let's say your first day at the dental school. Is there anything that you would have done differently, or would you give yourself a different advice?
Only one? No, there's so many things I'd do differently. But, you know, I think I came in a little bit too nervous and too rigid. And actually my classmate, and he ended up being my roommate through third and fourth year, he's a periodontist now, Jordy. He gave me like a kind of a synopsis of how I was. And he was like, you walked in with a briefcase and you were so stiff and you're like in fancy clothes and this and that, whatever. You felt, you know, that professional look. You wanted to be a professional and start off your professional career like that, which is not wrong. But he said the perception that we had of you, just looking at you walking in like that, is completely different of what you were. So probably that's what I would have changed. I would have been less nervous if I could have been, you know, or forced myself to be a little bit relaxed and just take it in. You know, I think that's the main thing. I think once you get to that stage, you know, obviously you have to do the hard work and you have to go through the classes and you have to, but part of it is actually just taking it in and not resisting it to a certain degree, just going with the flow to a certain degree, you know.
Enjoying the journey, right?
Enjoying the journey is a big thing of it. Yeah.
I think there's another fascinating story about your life, is that you finished the dental school, you completed the dental school, and then you worked for 7 years, right?
I worked for 3 years.
For 3 years as a general dentist, and then you decided to go back and become an orthodontist.
Right.
What was behind it?
So the goal was always orthodontics. Even so, in second year of dental school, I I met the orthodontist that was teaching us, or one of the orthodontists that was teaching us, and I really, it was like looking in a mirror. A mirror that's 20 years older than you, but someone that mirrors your values and mirrors your personality. So when I met this person, it was my introduction into orthodontics, and I said, this is probably something that I want to do. And then I learned about the field of orthodontics afterwards, of course, during dental school. In third and fourth year, you learn a lot about, actually, at the University of Toronto, you did learn quite a bit of orthodontics as you're going through. And that's where the passion began. And so the goal was always that, but I did want to, like the work-life balance, I did want to balance everything out. So I met my wife in second year of dental school, and we wanted to get married, and we wanted to start everything off. But I didn't feel like I wanted to go from school to school. I wanted some sort of outside experience as well. And I never discounted general dentistry because I actually really liked doing it as well. So I didn't want to limit myself to orthodontics and say, hey, all of this education that I did, I'm not going to use some of it, so why don't I at least try it out and practice for a few years and save up some money for professional school, get married. And we got married, I graduated in 2001, we got married in 2003. So that was part of it as well. I didn't want to delay getting married and starting my life that way as well. So it was, that was a whole bunch of things that went into that decision to delay applying for orthodontic school. And then the year that we got married is the year that I applied, and then you starting to think about family and your future. And I was wavering a little bit. I said, this is my passion. I would love to do this. However, I have responsibility as well. And it was actually my wife that pushed me in that direction. She said, listen, if this is where you want to be eventually, we're still young. We can still do this. So she's the one that pushed me in the direction. And in my mind, I was thinking, I'll apply once. If I don't get in, then it's okay. I'm very, very happy with my general dental practice. I practiced with a really nice gentleman in the north suburbs in Vernon Hills, Dr. Stephen Hoffenberg, awesome guy. And I think that pathway would have been just great also. But I applied, luckily got in, and then that's history from there.
And that was the University of...
That's the University of Manitoba. So I had some choices in terms of orthodontic schools as well. One of my very good friends and classmates from dental school, he was already at the University of Manitoba. He actually went, he did a one-year residency elsewhere in Syracuse, and then he went to the University of Manitoba for orthodontics. And I was talking to him along the way, and he said, listen, our education at Toronto was pretty good. This education at Manitoba is amazing. It's such a good environment, and it's a good environment to learn clinical skills, because this is what we're going to do for the rest of our careers. It's a good research environment as well if that's something that you want to do, but he knows me. He knows that I wanted to be a clinician for the rest of my life, and God bless the researchers that are out there, because it takes a lot of effort and time to do what they do, but that's not the path that I wanted to take. I wanted to be a good clinician, and that's where the University of Manitoba came in. And it was again, I always say lucky, because it is, certain aspects of it is your merits, but a lot of aspect of it is your luck of getting into certain programs and getting into certain situations where so I was lucky enough to get into the Manitoba, and it was nice. It was a nice environment. And
by the time you got into that university, you were already married, right?
I was married already, so so applied to orthodontic school the year that we were married. So we were married in August, and I got into the University of Manitoba in November of that same year, 2003, and we started the program in July of 2004. So surprise you're married and surprise you're moving to Manitoba. So, and my wife was very, very supportive. She was really good about it, and she's actually the one that pushed me in that direction. So it was nice.
Which is great to have that support at home.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Did you guys both move to?
So initially we didn't. I moved up there, and she had a very good job over here. So she continued her job over here, and then she moved up a few months later. Over there, and it was really tough on her because she's a very independent person as well, and she has, her own career, and her whole family is in this area and in the Chicagoland area. So, and she's grown up with her family, and she hasn't lived in any other city. So it was very, very tough for her. I'd feel horrible. I'd come home from school and I'd be so excited because when you get into something that you have a passion for, you're happy every single day. I had a smile on my face every single day, and I'd come home and I'd see her red eyes from crying all day, talking to her dad or talking to her mom or something like that, and you feel horrible. But you talk to each other and you say, hey, listen, this is a short period of time. It's not like we're not going to move anywhere else. This is where we're going back to. We're going to be with our friends and family in the Chicagoland area, and this is a relatively short period, and this is the dues that we have to pay to get where we want to get. So.
And what would you say contributed to success? Obviously, you guys worked that through, and now you have two beautiful kids.
Yes.
What is it? Something that is a communication again, making sure that you guys talk. Because I'm sure a lot of people are struggling with that. Yeah,
it's communication and it's compromise, definitely. And I mean, it's a struggle. Anyone that says marriage is easy, it's not. It's a struggle. There's great times and there's not so great times, but as long as you kind of act as a team, and that was probably early on, was when you fight your first year of marriage. Probably most couples do the most during their first year of marriage after the honeymoon period, but. You sit down, and we sat down, and we said, listen, this is our team, this is our family for the rest of our lives. So, there's going to be compromise here and there. And I think that's when the mutual understanding happens. Like, we dated for 4 years before. However, you don't really get that commitment in your mind until, or we didn't, not everyone, but we didn't get that commitment in our mind until you're married. And the day after we were married, I woke up and you have this sense of responsibility, and it's elevated so much more when you have kids, but the sense of responsibility the day after, and I woke up and I was like, oh man, I'm responsible for this person that's beside me. That's kind of how I approached it, and that's how she kind of approaches me as well. She's like, I'm responsible for you as well. So I think that's how we work through our problems whenever we have problems or arguments or whatever it is. It's mutual respect.
Exactly. One of the things I look at it is it's all about choices in life, right? It's and pretty much you're making the choices. And it's so interesting how when you woke up that first day after the wedding and you look to the right or to the left and you see your significant other, and at that moment you made a decision that I'm responsible, and that's a great thing. Not like, oh my God, I'm responsible for this another person. My life sucks, kind of thing.
It's an amazing thing. Yeah.
And I'm trying to find within your personality. Is it always like that you look at the bright side?
I am I'm a optimist. To a fault sometimes. So some of my staff members are also sometimes they're like, oh man, you're always thinking about positive things. Come on, just be negative one time. I'm like, I can't do it. No, I'm an optimist. So it does help a lot in my life and in my career. It has helped a lot for myself. I'm not sure if it's for everyone because some people have different motivating factors, but for myself, being optimistic really helps.
I do want to ask you a question about passion. I feel like this word is a little bit overrated today with many other words, but everybody talks about passion, right? Everybody say follow your passion and follow your dreams and things like that. You said that early on you learned that orthodontics, maybe in the second or third year of dental school, that orthodontics is something that you might be passionate about. Then you practiced for 3 years. What was the decision-making process to go into the ortho school? I understand Nia pushed you to apply, but also was it like, were you sitting and thinking and debating, is it my passion, is it something I want to do, or you exactly knew that this is what I'm going to do?
I'm not, I don't waver back and forth, so I think, you know, looking back it's kind of hazy, but I think I decided that this is what I wanted to do pretty early on. I was thinking about practical things along the way, of course, but in my heart, it's hard to explain how this happened, because it's probably a whole bunch of things that happened along the way. You know, interactions with some patients in orthodontics in dental school. Also, I was close to the orthodontist that I worked with at Loyola Hospital when I did the one-year residency in Loyola, and we're still close to this day. And then interaction with the orthodontists around me when I was practicing general dentistry as well. You know, I'd see what they'd do, and you know, patients would come to them, and they're happy people. You know, happy coming and happy going. You know, just and it was a good environment, and that's sort of how the passion. Again, I feel like I'm using that word too much, but that's how that developed. Was just seeing this interaction with patients and seeing what they could do with orthodontics, the different orthodontists, the senior orthodontist I was observing and working with. So that was.
Then let me ask you another question, opposite to being passionate about or being optimistic. Did you have any failures in life?
Many. I feel like, you know, my favorite quote is Michael Jordan's quote, and I'm sure you know what it is. You know, I've missed this many shots. I've missed this many game-winning shots in my life. I haven't, you know, done this. I fail, and that's why I succeed. And I think that's the main thing. And there's no failures that I haven't learned from, and there's no failures that stick out in my mind. They're like, oh, I wish I did that, or I wish I did that. There's nothing in my mind, because if you feel like, if you want to classify something as a failure, and you learn from it, then I feel like you just move on, and you won't do the same mistake again, and you won't fail in the same way again. And then, you know, it's not that you push it out of your mind. It doesn't stick in your mind as being something that you regret. You know?
Is there any, like, the biggest failure that you remember and you're like, this is what I've learned from it, and maybe you could share a little bit?
Biggest failure, you know, and I have a very good friends these days. We do a lot of like philosophical discussions and everything, you know. But I had a friend actually that passed away almost a year ago. He passed away in July of 2014, and I was talking to his brother. His brother and him were very, very close people, and we were talking about this word failure or regret, or you know, however you want to classify it. And I was telling him, I don't regret anything that I did, because throughout my life, my philosophy has been to do no harm and to, you know, help people and do whatever I need to do to help people. But the regret that I have is doing things that I didn't do. You know, like, for example,
that's huge, yeah.
You know, I didn't go on this trip because I had to do this, or I didn't go on this trip because I don't think I had enough money to save for it, or you know, it may be not the most responsible decision, but this opportunity presented itself, and I didn't go here. And one instance in mind actually comes in mind, and it was his name's Sagar, who passed away. His bachelor party was in Barcelona. And at the time, busy practice. I was at this practice and my other practice in Palos. And it was hard to schedule time off because I was early in practice. And you know, you don't want to disappoint staff by taking a vacation. You don't want to disappoint patients or inconvenience patients by taking a vacation. But I feel like that would have been great, just to spend that time with him. Because there's a group of 5 guys that went to Barcelona, just had a lot of fun and spent time together, and you know, before his wedding, and you know, you get closer on trips like that, and you know, and something that I didn't do, and then we lost him the year after. So this was 2013, and we lost him in 2014. So if you want to talk about regret, it's things that, not things that I did, but things that I didn't do. You know, I didn't, you know, get
And that
done.
probably brings a different perspective in life, so
Right,
when you make the decisions.
right.
Well, now you're involved in Madsen Orthodontics. You're involved in many other practices, and you own practices yourself. When you were on the way to being just in the clinical side, but now in a business owner side, what did you have to learn?
So there's a lot that you have to learn. I mean, in terms of the inner workings of a business from day one, and it's basically on the job training. It's nothing that you can read about. I don't think, at least, or there's nothing that I read, but there's you know, it was basically working through everything. And I had a good mentor as well, Dr. Manassi, who sold me the practice, and he worked with me, or he still works with me. He's a good mentor, and he's mentored me not only in this practice, but in dentistry in general, and organized dentistry as well. So having good people around you is part of it. We have a great staff. I mean, that's the main reason why a lot of successful businesses you know, are successful. And staff is the wrong word, it's team. You know, we have a great team. That's basically what it is. And you have to obviously, you know, cultivate your team members and pick the right people, obviously, that are going to be around you, or at least explain your philosophy and say, hey, this is our pathway and this is what we're going to do. And that's how we've gotten great people around us.
And I'm sure now you come across doctors who own multiple practices, right? And I think one of the interesting things in dentistry is it's a growing field. You see doctors owning different practices. It's hard to call them corporate because you probably own 3 to 4. And so what you do is very, very successful. I've seen other dentists. I know that you're putting a lot of hard work in. Your practices are always on the top. You're always successful. When you look at other dentists, what do you consider success?
You know, that's a really good question, actually. I think success it's a personal decision. Like in my vision of success, of course, it's revenue of the practice and all of that, and that's kind of aside to a certain degree. But I feel like true success is happiness of your patients that come to you and happiness of the staff members that are around you. Over the years, that's, you know, of course my philosophies have molded in different ways, but that's where I've come to at this point in my career, at least, is, you know, people walking out of the door being very, very happy with the experience that they've gotten at your practice and the results that they've gotten at your practice, and people that are around you every day, your team members, that are happy to come to work and are passionate or share the passion that you have in the work that you're doing. I feel like that's the main success. And you know, in a business model type, and I'm only going back to that because, you know, it's not always a happy-go-lucky type situation, but of course you have to make revenue if you're going to have multiple practices. So revenue-based success is definitely important, but I feel like if you keep those two things in mind, you know, happiness of your patients and happiness of your staff, I feel like everything else will kind of follow along. And you have to obviously make the right business decisions and keep your eye on your business and make sure that you're not making major mistakes in your business and stuff like that, of course. But you know, those are the main two things.
I'd like to ask you a very straightforward question. You and I both have friends who are dentists, and we see all the flashy things, and you know, does money really important?
Money's necessary, but money's not important. You know, money's necessary to a certain extent, and it's a personal thing. You know, I want to live this sort of lifestyle, so this is how much I have to make per year to live this sort of lifestyle. So that's a necessity. You know, but it's not the end-all and be-all. It doesn't have to be your driving force for everything. I feel like a lot of people that have had that driving force that I've come in contact with aren't complete in life. You know, I feel like they're missing something, or you know, you may just observe them, you know, as a third person or as someone that doesn't really know them. But I feel like those type of people aren't really happy in life. They have all the money in the world, but they're not, you know, they don't have that complete picture of what real success is in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
It might be another tough question, but how do you pick friends? Do you choose friends?
You know, and I think my friends choose me. Honestly, I feel like and I'm so lucky. I mean, that's the other thing, and that's why it was hard to lose Sagar, because he was such a great person. And we don't have a huge friend group. According to some people, we do have a huge friends group, but in my mind, I feel like we have a good group of core friends that share the same philosophies, and I feel like we just migrated to each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know, and I'm not a big, you know, karma universe type mentality type person, but I feel like we just migrated to each other, and just, you know, that we found each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I have a very interesting question for you. If you can summarize your passion to dentistry or what you do on a day-to-day basis in one word, what would that be?
It'd be smiles.
Smiles?
Yeah.
It's
Just, I
incredible.
mean, it's such a powerful thing. Not only creating smiles, I mean, on the surface, of course, we do dental work or orthodontic work to create smiles, but I feel in my definition of smiles, it's actually the patient's experience, that the smile that you get from a patient, whether it be their mouth or their eyes. You know, you can smile from your eyes as well. It's the satisfaction that you get from that is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Here, one of the last questions. What does the word trust mean to you?
To me, it's a emotional connection. You know, it's hard for a lot of people, and there's several layers of trust, or several degrees of trust. I think it's very emotional. I feel like if you trust someone with your medical care or dental care, I feel like it's something that comes from within, and it's something that it's hard to do, because you know, whether you get information from family members or friends, or you know, or you just look on Google and you look at reviews and stuff like that, and you know, those are obviously good tools to use, but I don't think you really get to trust someone until you meet them and you get to experience the environment that they're in.
If you look back at your career, either being in a dental school or the ortho school, would you give an advice to yourself back then, or something that you would have done differently, or specifically about building the trust with the patient? Would you tell yourself at that moment, or give yourself an advice?
Probably the main, and I think about this a lot actually, in terms of not regret, but just refining things. Let's just say, hey, there are several students that come here and seek our advice, you know, shadow us from either high school, dental school, that want to do orthodontics or want to do dentistry. But I kind of think of them, not think of myself. But I think it's relaxing a little bit more, and not relaxing in the fact of, you know, putting your feet up and relaxing. I feel like not overanalyzing things too much, or not stressing yourself out too much for little things that happen along the way. I feel like keeping the big picture in mind is the main thing, and saying, okay, this is my main goals, or these are my main priorities, and if you keep focused on that, I feel like you're going to achieve them. And one of my main goals or priorities was to have success in patient satisfaction and staff satisfaction.
Well, you definitely achieved that.
Thank you.
I think you have one of the greatest teams. You know, it's always
It's not done yet.
Here.
We gotta keep on going.
Exactly.
It's daily work, but it's fun work. It's good.
It's fun, but I so agree with you. Surrounding yourself with the right people, the team, and the team that you've built, it's amazing. And every time, it's like coming home.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's great. I love it, and you know, again, no one, if anyone feels like they can manage a whole office on their own, they can't. It's everyone that's around you that's doing the brunt of it. You're just there to guide them in certain ways, and you're there to take the journey with them sometimes. You know?
Right. Well, Keyur, you definitely, in my eyes, achieved the success that a lot of people are going to. I think you and I are measuring success in a little different way than most of the people do. Just that you said that you're looking for the smile. You're looking for the smile of the patient and your team members is more important than the balance sheets and everything else. It's also important, but there are different perspectives in life. And so I think you're a great example of people who have the right focus in life and the right priorities in life.
I hope so.
And thank you so much. I wanted to thank you. It was a great interview.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.